Welcome to another episode. I'm here today with Lewis Potts. Thank you so much for coming, bro.
Thank you for having me, mate.
We're going to talk about re-identification and just really we're going to dive in deep into your personal journey with everything that happened in the past few years of your life. So, hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
I've been looking forward to and dreading this.
I was really looking forward as well, ever since you did that talk at Steve's first seminar.
Oh, yeah, that was the first time I'd ever spoke.
I think that was before the operation, right?
Yeah. Quite a way before, actually. Like a year before.
Yeah. But I already at the time, I could tell like your story is just so unique and so inspiring. So even at the time in my head, I was like, I'm going to do a podcast one day. I'm going to invite this guy.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I hope I live up to the expectations.
Oh, of course. Cool. So I usually start with the hardest question, which is, who is Lewis Potts?
Who is Lewis Potts? So currently, and I say currently because this is going to sound really cliche already, there's been different versions throughout my life, right? But currently, I am an online coach. I am working alongside other coaches to help other coaches develop their business. But that's kind of like what I do. It's not really who I am, right? So who I am is, the way that I kind of think about it is I'm just somebody that wants to empower other people. I talk a lot about identity, right? And that is, I spent a lot of time thinking about my own, and that's ultimately what I am about right now. Mm-hmm. Whatever shape or form that comes in, I'm okay with it.
And you think that is because of the journey that you had? Because obviously there's been quite a big re-identification for you throughout what happened.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely partly down to the journey that I've personally been through, but I've also had a lot of empowering figures in my life as well, for me, that have had that kind of impact on me. So it's just something that over time I've been like, I really want to make other people feel a certain way, right? So So it's definitely a combination of things, but they're the two main factors, I would say.
Who were these figures?
Oh, straight in. Okay, so my parents, both of them, first and foremost, very lucky to come from a household where my parents, mine and my sister's parents, just would have done anything for us. Dad's a great role model. Learned a lot from him. Tough love along the way, but I feel like it was definitely needed at certain times in my childhood. I used to be a bit of a menace, shall we say.
In what way?
Just when I was younger, getting into all sorts of trouble, scrapes, fights. Nothing serious, nothing ever like really dangerous, but like I was definitely on a certain path until I hit like 18, 19 years old. And there was a point where it could have gone one or two ways. The way that I chose to go was moving away from where I'd been brought up to come to Manchester. But there was definitely a time where I was tied up with some dodgy people. Not really doing anything dodgy myself, but young, impressionable kid looking up to certain types of people. Okay. The typical, like, real, like, alpha male type people. Yeah, so my mum and my dad, absolutely. Coaches along the way, sports coaches. Even from being a kid, I played rugby from 8 years old. A guy called Dave, my first, like, who I remember being my first real coach. He was great. He had a great impact on us, on the entire team. More recently, my own mentor, Paul Mort, has had a significant...
Yeah, I see you post a lot about him.
Yeah, he's had a significant impact on my life. So definitely. And then even more recently, like people that I'm meeting now with what we're doing with the business side of things, right? Is people just like, this might sound weird, but like regular people that are doing really big shit, like really cool shit.
Yeah,
I find inspiration from many people, and I just kind of I also want to have that impact on others, I guess.
But I think that's that's kind of connected what you were talking about, like empowering other people. I think you're only able to do that if you're not necessarily a jealous person or someone that feels a lot of envy towards other people. You need to be able to see the good in other people to then be able to connect to it. And also wanting to perhaps empower that side of them. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's a large piece at play there, right? Like I've always been inspired by it and been like, oh, if they can do it, then maybe I can too, and that sort of stuff. And I'm like, I genuinely want everybody to win.
Yeah.
Even if sometimes that means other people like maybe impacting on what I'm doing. As long as everybody's winning, I'm that sounds so cliche. As long as everybody's winning, particularly the people around me, then I'm good.
There's a question I ask a lot of people, and it's would you rather be the best player in the worst team or the worst player in the best team?
For me, I would rather be I don't want to say the worst player, but the mediocre player on the better team. Right.
Okay.
So the way that I put it is, would you rather be an eagle or king of the pigeons? So I definitely don't want to be king of the pigeons.
Yeah. Is there anything? Well, there's probably loads, but is there anything that you learned through those days that you're using right now?
One of the biggest things that I learned through my entire time playing sport was how to lose. And I know that sounds weird. Like everybody loves winning, right? But being able to lose, that sort of mentality, I think, particularly in business, has really had an impact of, right, okay, didn't go to plan. What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Not didn't go to plan, not fair. No, didn't go to plan. What can I do now? I never really drew the parallels between team sports and what I'm doing now, coaching and business, until, yeah.
So what do you think it is that makes you a leader, or it makes you the one that people want to reference to?
Do you know what? I think the first thing is I'm always on a mission. I'm always on my own mission. And I feel like a leader needs to be somebody that is doing the thing. Like you can't be the guy that's there's like a meme, right? I don't know if you've seen it, and it's the same picture drawn twice, but with one guy stood at the back like cracking a whip, and one guy stood at the front like pulling the whatever it is. I think you've got to be that person. I think you've got to be on that mission yourself. If all the people that I think back to that had a big impact on my life, I don't think I would have looked up to them if they weren't already doing it and living it and being it.
Yeah.
Like Paul, for example, I know like I speak about him a lot, but if Paul wasn't doing what I wanted to do and empowering as many people as he did, I wouldn't be being mentored by him, right? So I think there's a definite. I always make sure that whatever I'm doing, I'm in, and if it's the wrong thing, that I'll assess it at some point, but I'm pulling in the same direction as everybody else.
Yeah, I think I don't know you that well, but I think first of all you're definitely very responsible, a lot more responsible than the average person I know, and I also think you're very present, and I think especially nowadays I think that's quite rare. I think there's a lot of people that are in the room but they're not really in the room. I think you're one of those people that they're well grounded and they're definitely with you when you're talking to them. And I think that's maybe one of the things.
When I started finding out about the health complications, I really started to focus on the mindset side of things, and there's a massive presence piece there, like making sure that you are actually feeling the feelings and dealing with them rather than burying your head in the sand or using coping mechanisms and stuff like that. But it wasn't always that way. It definitely wasn't always that way.
So obviously it changed because of what happened. So, well, first of all, do you want to give a little bit of context on what you actually went through?
Yeah, that'll probably be useful, right? Yeah. So I was in Australia playing really high level American football, and I ended up one morning, I woke up to go to training on a Sunday morning. I woke up and my partner at the time, she woke up as well, and I tried to say a sentence to her and all the words came out in the wrong order. It was like really strange, like really, really strange. I was like, oh, that was weird. And I tried to say the same sentence to her. I can't remember what it was. And all the words came out in a different order, but still not the right order. And straight away she was like, hospital. Like, let's go get this checked. I don't know what she thought. I didn't really think anything of it at the time. So straight to the hospital. They booked me in for like 4 or 5 different tests. I had an MRI, a Dopplers, which is where they check the arteries in your neck. I had ECGs, all that sort of stuff. It turns out afterwards they were looking for a blood clot, and they thought I'd had what's called, I'm not sure if it's a miniature or a minor stroke. I think they call it a minor stroke, where all the symptoms, no long-lasting damage. In the test, they didn't find any blood clot, nothing like that, but they were like, good news is we've not found any of this stuff. Bad news is we've found that you've got a heart defect. And I'm like, right, okay. And I was like, could that be linked to this heart defect? They were like, not really, probably just stress, but the good news is we've found this. So in Australia, the guidance was, but you're fit, you're healthy. Health is a loose term because I was 152 kilos at the time. Crack on, you'll be fine. So I carried on playing while I was in Australia. Then when I moved back to England, I had to get transferred across to the NHS to have the same test done because they needed it on their records. And it wasn't just a case of turning up to the doctors and being like, I've got this thing. Like, obviously they need it. They need to check it all. because of the waiting times in the NHS, they've been absolutely amazing throughout. So I don't want to sound like I'm bad mouthing them, but it took so I got back in December 2018. It wasn't until November 2019 that it had been dealt with.
Wow.
So for that season as well, I came back to England. I played American football. I carried on training, doing all that stuff.
Did you have any other episode of?
No, nothing. It was literally a one-off. It's never happened since. I think looking back now knowing what I know about stress and physical symptoms of stress, I think it was probably stress related. Maybe poor sleep, a couple of other things at play, but I don't think it was anything to do with, well, the doctors said it wasn't anything to do with this. So, but yeah, so November 2019, after it had all gone through, I got dragged into an office and basically they said, you've got a bicuspid valve, which is what the initial issue was. But because of that, you've had regurgitation into your heart. So when the heart pumps blood out of the body, my valve wasn't closing properly. So blood was going back into the heart, right? So because of that, there was more blood in the heart than there should have been, and it had started to stretch the wall of my heart, and I'd developed an aneurysm. So the real issue was if the aneurysm at any point would have popped, that's it, ruptured, goodbye, clocking out. So they dragged me into an office and was like, right, the terminology is borderline intervention, meaning emergency surgery. You got to stop everything that you're doing, right now. So that's essentially how I found out about it, what the issue was. And then, then started the battle of getting it seen to. So I was already in the process of losing a load of weight.
So at that point, you had to stop playing. You had to stop everything.
Everything, yeah. The whole lot.
How was that for you?
It was tough. Obviously, it was really tough. I took 2 or 3 weeks where I kind of threw my toys out of the pram and I was like, fuck this, it's not fair. Why me? No. And that's where the real sort of I got 2 or 3 weeks later, and it was in December, and I remember it was in December because we were actually organising to go down to stay with my ex-partner's parents at Christmas. It's just one of those memories, you know where you're like, I know where it was, and I was like, I can't live like this. It is what it is. There's nothing that I can do about it now. So what can I do something about? And after thinking about it and stewing over it for a couple more days, it was like, well, the only stuff I can really control now is the mindset side of things. It is how I'm going to respond to it, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to react.
So at that point, when you made that decision of, just taking care of your health, did you already know that you wouldn't have played anymore? Or did you think, okay, I'm going to get back into it at some point?
No, so the way it actually happened, so when I started losing the weight, it was actually nothing to do with the heart. I went to a festival with Steve, and on the second day of the festival, I had I had a bit of an epiphany, I guess you can say, and I was surrounded by these people that I'd never met before in my life, and they were all in incredible shape, and it was the first time in my life that I'd ever felt out of place, ever. And
why do you think, thinking about it now?
I'd come back from Australia, I was really heavy, like 150 kgs. So it was the first time in a big group of people that I'd never met before, all of which were very successful at the time I was bartending. So this is before coaching, this is before any of that. They were all doing really well for themselves. I'm not sure. It's probably an amalgamation of all of these things, right? It's a combination of everything. And it was just I don't really feel comfortable. I've never felt like this before. And I don't want to feel like this again. So I woke up on the Monday morning, had the typical hangover day, food, all that sort of stuff. On the Tuesday, I was like, right, let's do something about this then.
I think that's quite significant, because I think you could have reacted in so many different ways. In a situation like that, maybe, someone else would have been like, okay, I can't hang out with Steve anymore.
Yeah.
Or I need to change my group of friends.
Absolutely.
Instead, what you thought was okay, I need to do something.
I think it was a realization. So I'd known for a while that I was very overweight, but my justification was because of the position that I played in American football, the weight actually helped.
Yeah,
so
of course.
My job was to move people and not be moved. So the weight for sure helped. What's interesting is on the offensive line in Australia, I was the smallest at 150 kilos.
Wow.
I'd always known deep down, probably can't live like this forever. Probably gonna have to do something about this. It wasn't that I was unaware. It's just that the negatives didn't outweigh the positives of doing anything about it at that time.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think it was as significant as it may seem, because it was kind of like the realization that actually, yeah, you know this. Come on, you know that you've got to sort something out. Like,
Okay.
like you know that you're gonna have to do something
So
about
you
it.
don't think it was connected to the group? It was more like a.
I think the group was the catalyst. I think the event was the catalyst. The realization was kind of there, waiting, like waiting for almost the spark. Yeah. So, but that thought never crossed my mind. It was never a let's not see these people anymore. It was never a I'm fine. Like, it was never anything like that. It was like, okay, yeah, come on. I've always been fairly good at that, looking at things objectively, looking at the facts, and being like, right, make the decision based on this, not on how you feel about this. Along the way of my own journey, I guess, for want of a better word, is where the mindset stuff came to real light. It was like, dieting's easy. Like when you've got your head straight, choosing to or not to do certain things or eat certain things or behave in a certain way is a lot easier.
Yeah, when there's a need behind it.
Yeah, and when you're taking ownership and when you're realizing that you are actually in complete control of everything, it's the physical side of things becomes way easier, right? And
100%.
I went on to lose. I'm not suggesting that anybody should do this because it was, or like it took a long time, right? But again, I lost 65 kilos without exercise, just from controlling my own choices, ultimately.
Because you couldn't exercise, right?
I couldn't. So
part of it.
So the only thing that, obviously, lockdown hit in the February, so I was doing 10-ish thousand steps a day, and they'd said you can do light cardio. So I bought an exercise bike. I hated that exercise bike. I used to live in a 2-bed flat in lockdown. I would move the table out of the way. I would point the exercise bike at the TV and watch like 2 episodes of Pokemon and just like ticking over.
I've got a lot of questions for you still. Do you want to tell me a little bit about the time around the operation?
After I was sub 100 kilos, I can't remember the exact mark, they basically said, right, the aneurysm is no longer, I can't remember the word that they used, maybe progressing or growing or whatever. So you are no longer at immediate risk. So now you don't have to have the surgery. You'll probably have to have it when you're like 65 years old. You're good. And I was like, so I've got to live like this until I'm 65 years old. Because there was a lot of mental stuff at play, like I had to be careful. So the thing that they were looking for is no spikes in blood pressure. So little things that you don't think about. So like the guidance was, if you wake up in the night and you need to take a piss, you have to wake up, then you have to sit up, and you have to sit for 30 seconds, then you have to stand up, because going from completely dormant to jumping out of bed is bad for your blood pressure. You can't run upstairs anymore. The thing that triggered it for me, it was almost stupid looking back, but I'm glad it did. It was a group of friends were talking about going to Alton Towers, to the theme park, and they were like, can you go on roller coasters? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. And I had a direct email for my surgeon's receptionist. So I emailed them and I was like, can I go on roller coasters? And she was like, I don't know. There was like, she rang me and there was like, there's a lot of things that we don't know because it's unethical to test, right? You can't take somebody that's got this condition and put them on a roller coaster and see if they survive. So the answer for a lot of things was, I don't know. Like scuba diving, can I do that? Don't know. Can I skydive? Don't know. Like just be careful. Yeah, so I was like, absolutely fucking not living my life like this, walking on eggshells forever. So, but because I was no longer in emergency need of the surgery, and because COVID was going on, they were completely happy to let me just live. So I had to basically take the fight to them to actually get them to let me have the surgery. And it took ages. Meeting after meeting after meeting, me pushing for it, like having to really open up about the mental part. And then finally, a surgeon agreed to meet me. So I sat and talked with the surgeon and he ran me through the exact operation. I wanted to know everything. I was like, give me every gory detail. I want to know how long I'm going to be asleep for, what you're going to do. I want to know the whole lot, and then I'll make a decision based on that. We had the conversation and I just really clicked with him. Like, I know it sounds really weird, but he was the right level of weird, if that makes sense. Like, to a surgeon, I guess a human body is just a slab of meat, right? So he was speaking about everything so like matter of fact and so like it was nothing. I was like, that's the guy I want to have his hands in my chest. Like he's the guy. And I was like, right, okay, will you do the surgery? He was like, yeah, I'll do it. It was like, it's a no-brainer. It was like, the average age of the people that have that surgery is over 60 years old. You're never going to be younger. You're never going to be fitter. Your chance of recovery is higher. Let's get it done. Like walk in the park. So So yeah, I'd pushed for it for quite a while, but because of obviously the situation that was going on, well, globally, right, with COVID, I was just slotted onto a waiting list, and anybody that came in that was higher on the wait, like a higher risk, got put in above me. So it was constantly changing, and I kind of knew that I was on the list. It could be at any point in the next year. And that was it. It was like, you're on the list, and you can't, you have no, like, there's no text update. Like, you are third in the queue. Like, and I got a phone call, maybe it was like the Friday. We've got an open on Monday. Do you want this surgery? And I was like, holy shit. Okay. Like, no time to really think about it, because obviously I would have had to have shielded. So, like, couldn't leave the house, at risk of catching COVID and all that sort of stuff. Like, if you want the surgery, you need to basically lock yourself away now until Monday. Coming on Sunday, we'll get you admittable, and we'll get it done. So, yeah, it was really, really strange looking back at the time. Even though I'd done everything that I could to prepare myself mentally for it, it was like a bombshell, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I'd known what was happening. I knew what was coming. It's kind of weird because I'd fought for it. It was like, I want this thing, give me this thing, give me this thing, give me this thing. They came to me and was like, we've got the thing. And I was like, whoa, not yet. Yeah, so it was strange, really. I rang my dad first, and then I ended up breaking down crying on the phone to my dad and couldn't really talk or anything. So I said, I'll ring you back. Then the second person that I rang was Steve and said, this is the thing. And Steve just said to me, get it fucking done. Just like, get it over and done with. You know you're going to have it at some point anyway. These feelings aren't going to go away. Deal with it, essentially. And that, I guess, tough love is exactly what I needed. Mm-hmm. So then I rang my dad back and I was like, I'm going to do it. We're going to get on with it.
So you were actually doubting it then?
Yeah, I don't know what I was looking for. I don't know what... I've thought about this a lot since, because it's a conversation I've had a few times with a few people. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe some miracle to come around and go, oh, actually, you don't need the surgery. Like, you're good. I don't know why... I tried every justification. So it was coming up to Christmas. I'd not even set up my own business at the time. We'd finished Get Results training, and I had a bunch of clients, but nothing set up for them, and I was just coaching them on the fly. So my first justification was, what about my clients? And Steve said, we'll sort that. Don't worry about that. I'll jump into the group. I'll handle it while you need it, all that sort of stuff. So that excuse was gone. Then it was start of December. Part of the recovery from the surgery is I've got a big dog, right? So I had to move back to my mum and dad's. I knew I was going to have to move back to my mum and dad's, but Christmas was coming. So the next thing that I was like, oh, well, Christmas is coming. I don't want to ruin anybody's Christmas. And then my mum and dad were like, well, you're coming back for Christmas anyway. Like, don't worry about it.
So what was behind all the excuses then?
I don't know. Maybe fear, I guess. Fear. So it was a 3% chance of death from the surgery, which is low. Like, real. When I said it to the surgeon, he was like, that's very good. Like, the older you get, the higher the risk is. In my head, I was like, if 3 out of every 100 planes crashed, would you get on a plane? But looking back now, there was no real need to be scared. Like, it had to be done anyway. I really don't know what it was. And it's still something that I still think about, like why I was so scared. Then my partner at the time came back from work, and I told her, and then I literally laid on the floor in the living room, face down, for like 45 minutes and just cried. And then after that, I was like, right.
What were you crying about?
Honestly, I don't know. I think through the entire from finding out until it happening, I think I cried on like the first couple of days. So when I found out, obviously I was in Australia, so I wasn't around my family. So I dealt with it before I told them. And then when I told them, my mum and my dad got a little bit upset on the phone, and that upset me. So that was the first time I cried. The second time was after the surgeon had agreed to do it. My dad gave me a lift to the hospital and back, and I came out of the appointment buzzing. I was like, yes, I'm getting the surgery. Like, get in. I can get on with my life. Sat in the car. My dad asked me how it had done, and that was it. Like, that was the second time I cried, and the third time was then when I found out I was having the operation. So whether it was stuff that I'd kind of maybe not dealt with because I'd been very action focused, maybe I'd not taken the time to think about the possibilities of what could actually happen.
Yeah. I mean, crying is usually a good sign. It just means that you're letting go. So
Yeah,
perhaps
for
it was
sure.
also a lot of tension that was accumulated over the months. And
I've never been. I've always been comfortable crying. I've never vulnerability has never bothered me ever. It's just, yeah. I think because, like I said, I'd been dealing with what I could deal with. My mindset was, if I'm gonna have to get this done, I want it to be on my terms. Like, I want to say when. I want to do everything that I can to control it. There's probably some sort of demons at play here, but I've always had like a thing about control, right? I'm scared of flying because I'm not in control. I'd rather drive, even though driving statistically is more dangerous, because I'm in control.
yeah,
Whereas on a flight, I'm like, well,
yeah.
hopefully he gets me to the other side. Like,
I suppose there's always a level of control that you can have over
yeah,
a certain situation. But
yeah,
I
yeah,
get
yeah. I was very much like, right, what can you do? So that's where I started things like journaling.
So obviously the surgery was a big pivoting moment, and that's because obviously there was a practical thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So, but do you feel like there was perhaps like a part of yourself that you had to let go at that point? Like, do you feel like you've also changed mentally and emotionally since that moment, or you think it was more gradual?
I don't think it was a sudden thing. I think during the recovery, I really realised what I'm capable of. It's tough, man. Moving back to your parents after living on your own for 13 years, having to get them to, first couple of times I had to like get helped into the shower, like just little things. Again, I was like, right, what can I do about it? Like it was never like, oh, this is shit, this is so unfair, any of that sort of stuff. It was like, right, okay, what can I do today? 200 steps. Okay, well, I'm going to do that 5 times then throughout the day, right? Like, obviously, part of the surgery was full open heart onto a ventilator, so it wasn't just the wound that needed to recover. Like, my lungs had been switched off for like 9 hours. So just things that you'd never even think about. Like, there's a video that I posted not long ago, actually, that I've posted a few times since, of the first time that I left the house to walk, and it was like snail's pace, but I was like, I'm doing whatever it is that I can do, I'm doing it. My mum and dad were absolutely like heroes through the entire thing. Like there's a lake about a 20-minute drive from them. A couple of times a week I'd say to my dad, he's self-employed, got his own business, real busy. I was like, can you take me to the lake? I want to see how far I can get around it. Constantly like, right, what's next? So I think I really started to realize my own resilience is probably the right word then, not in the lead up to it, because in the lead up to it you're kind of preparing something for something which might never come, but then it was like, okay, now you've got to deal with this. So I think that was definitely a gradual thing. I wouldn't say I kind of left anything behind. Like, it's all the stuff that I'd like left behind, like my old identity was very much linked to sport and who I was in certain social circles that had already gone, long gone. So there's been no kind of like immediate like sudden change, but definitely.
What about the people around you? Obviously, you know, the group of people you used to hang out with must have changed a lot in the whole process.
Yeah, for sure. So again, that's more linked to the weight loss side of things. So I used to go out and party a lot. We'd go out like every Friday, Saturday. A group of maybe probably knew 30 to 40 people that would go to the same place every Friday, Saturday. Music was great. It's like a ping pong bar, got ping pong tables. We knew the DJs, we knew the door staff, we knew the bar staff. So like a lot of friends / people that you know to say hello to, take a shot and shake hands with in a club, but like that's kind of it, right? That kind of stopped as I started to get further and further into the weight loss, and then obviously lockdown happened, which kind of isolated everybody. So that group of 20, 30, 40 on any given night is now down to like a group of maybe 4, 2 of which Steve and Sean we work with now, and then a couple of others that I still keep in touch with.
Do you feel like your relationship with these people changed over the years, especially with your parents, for example?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like I said, I had a very good upbringing. I really started to get on with my family, like really get on with them when I moved out. I think that's the case for a lot of people. A lot of people say the same thing. So then I'd moved out to university at 19 years old, and then I never went back. I stayed in Manchester, then I moved to Australia. Then when I came back, I moved straight back to Manchester, and I've had a great relationship since. But I think like definitely, I was always going to be, nothing, don't mean to speak down on this, but I was always going to be perfectly happy just working in hospitality, running a bar. And then I think as I've started to develop professionally as well, there's definitely like I know my parents are proud of me now. Like I know they always have been, but I know they are now. So that's kind of developed as well.
So you think the whole situation in a weird way gave you a bit of an opportunity to redeem yourself somehow? Or
I wouldn't
maybe
necessarily.
not necessarily towards your parents, but maybe towards yourself or the opinion that you had of yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So there was a period of time where before I moved to Manchester, and when I was in Manchester as well, that I was making reckless decisions, doing stupid things. I was being the alpha male, getting into trouble,
Did you like yourself at the time?
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah. Like and I remember actually, I think I spoke about this at that talk you mentioned. I loved it. I was out. I had again what I thought at the time. I was DJing, so I was DJing 3-4 nights a week. So I knew most of the bouncers where we'd go. I knew could get away with a lot. Like used to be able to walk all my friends into a club, feel like a bit of a like, do you know what I mean? Bit of a lad. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. But now looking back, it's that would you have changed it? Absolutely not, because I think people need to go through the stuff that they've been through to get to where they are now. And I think that's easier to say from somebody like me who's happy with who I am now. That to look back and go, I wouldn't have changed any of it because it led me here. If I didn't like who I am now, then if you look back, am I making sense? If you look back then, was I happy with the decisions that I made then? Well, no, because I'm not happy with who I am now.
And that's not how you feel?
No. So because I am happy with who I am now and the person that I am and the person that I'm becoming, maybe there is an aspect of redeeming myself.
So do you feel grateful for what happened to you?
That's another great question. Yes and no. I'm glad that I was forced to deal with some stuff, because if I'd have not had this, even in Australia, I was still partying a lot, going out a lot. I was still a version of that person that I was in Manchester. So the like pleasure seeking, like the big name, whatever you want to call it. Like it makes me cringe to say it. So I'm glad that I had something that made me wake up and realise. But I fucking wish I could still play sport.
Yeah.
Like, so am I grateful for it? Probably overall, yes, but it'd be like a 51-49 split. Like 51% grateful, 49% wish there was another way. But again, there's no point like getting yourself anchored in that stuff, right? There's no point in stressing about it. I've got like a theory that I've developed that's come from like Stoic philosophy of like focusing on what you can control. And that's something that I regularly bring myself back to now, of being like, right, okay, identifying what the issue is, identifying what of the issue you can actually do something about. So there's no point me getting stressed about the heart situation. It's just something I was born with. Getting stressed about it would be wasted energy and wasted time.
No, for sure. I'm just like, because what I'm interested in is that obviously like the child in us when we are facing a situation like this would just, you know, it's what you said earlier. You'd be asking yourself why me, right? And I think you got to give yourself some sort of answer, right? So what answer did you give yourself? Why do you think this happened to you?
See, I kind of...
you think it doesn't matter?
No, I kind of disagree, because only in this situation, and I do think you've definitely got a point, and it's definitely something that I'm going to think about, but I was born with this. So why me? Pot luck. Bad luck, really. Like really, it's like 1 in 100 men have got what I've got, or got what I had, should I say. Most of them will never find out about it if they live a quote unquote normal life.
Yeah, I mean, my brother passed for something similar.
Right.
He had a heart defect and no one knew about it, and then he had a heart attack and he died because of it. But it was a technical problem with the heart. It was a defect.
Yeah.
And so he passed because they didn't know about it. So.
Yeah. So I was one of the lucky ones in a way that found out about it. Right. So about a year before I moved to Australia, a guy that we played American football with, his brother suddenly passed away playing basketball. Exact same thing that I had. And it's a similar thing that a lot of I don't really follow football, but there's been Premiership footballers dropping dead. Like on the field or training, similar thing. It's something that's unnoticed. You wouldn't find it unless you were looking for it. Why it happened, it's just luck of the draw, I guess. And I think some things do, or bad luck of the non-luck of the draw, however you want to word it. I think some things do come down to that. So
it's mostly how to navigate forward, right?
yeah.
But I think perhaps this way of looking at things kind of helped you just being a bit more proactive and be like, like this is the situation.
Yeah.
Let me see what I can do about it, as opposed to having to find a deeper meaning into why this happened to you.
I understand. Yeah. So in that sense, I 100% am grateful for it. When I found out in Australia, it was weird because I kind of found out twice. I found out in Australia and they were like, "You're fine. Don't worry about it," which looking back was wild because I could have literally died in that season, but it is what it is. So then I found out again. So I'd kind of already dealt with the fact that I'd got a heart problem. I just didn't know the severity of it. So then when I found out in England and it was, right, you're done with everything like now, that was, that was definitely obviously more serious. Without that, would I have gone through the process that I've gone through? Maybe, because I was already on the whole sorting myself out, losing weight and stuff like that. But would it have happened? I almost feel like it's just been accelerated. Like the process of kind of like realization and personal development, responsibility, like you mentioned earlier, self-awareness is something I'm huge on. I feel like it just got accelerated. You know, like when you're on Mario Kart and you go across one of the boosters. So I am thankful in that sense, for sure.
So if you were to look back at your younger self, is there anything?
If I could look back and tell my younger self something, was that the question?
Yeah.
Don't be who you think people want you to be, and also listen to people more.
Suppose you got to listen to the right people, though.
Yeah. There's another one then. Pick the right people.
So, and to anyone that is not necessarily facing the same situation, but maybe a situation in which they, there's a condition or a circumstance that is forced upon them, and they can't really do much about changing that aspect. But perhaps they could try to be more proactive. What would you say to them?
Don't bury your head in the sand. I could have woke up that morning when I had that episode in Australia and just been like, I'll be fine. Identify what is happening factually, not what you feel about what is happening, and then start to identify what you can do about it and be realistic. Like me being like, okay, I've got this heart condition. What can I do about it? Change it. Well, you can't. Okay. Like, what can I actually do? I can prioritize my health. I can make sure that I'm almost mentally prepared for handling stress, for handling these sorts of days. I can research into things like mindfulness, journaling, meditation, if it's your thing, all that sort of stuff. But I say you've got no choice, but there is a choice. Like, do it or don't. If you do it, you'll get something. If you don't do it, you'll get something. Pick. Right? It's. I know that's quite a like black and white, straight way to look at things, but in certain situations,
I think sometimes black and white really helps. Yeah.
In certain situations, it's needed. Yeah. And if you can't be that person to yourself, like I'm very good at being quite harsh with myself when it's needed. If you can't be that person for yourself, find somebody that can. Find somebody that you can trust, who you can present the options to and go, you pick.
Thank you so much for coming, bro.
No worries, I've enjoyed it.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, and I'll see you next time.